Welcome to Fencing Flops, where we take a look at fencing and media. I have over 11 years of competitive experience. I'm a coach and a certified ref in foil, epee, and saber. This week on the strip is the Last Musketeer, so let's get to the point and see what it has to offer.
Stand at ease. Hey, they're trying to be alert as during the fight, so until then, relax. Right, I need to see how advanced you are. Name?
Fiona Lutchen, sir. Fiona's very advanced for her age, sir.
Right, well, get your foils and show me then.
Please, sir, you have to blow your whistle. That's what Mr. Harrison used to do.
Well, I don't have a whistle.
Haven't you got anything else to blow?
Get your foils. Right, we'll have a look at the basics. Gerson, you on the team? Right. Show me how to lunge.
I'm very quickly going to bring up something before moving on, because I'm curious to see how they actually handle it. It wasn't bad up until this point where he had the student lunge at him specifically without wearing a mask, and she's within distance. I don't know what he was doing with his hands. I just have no idea what that must have been for. But if someone is lunging at you, even for drills or practice or, something like that, if you're within distance, you need a mask. Any coach would know that. I kind of see this trope in a lot of other media with fencing where, I guess the trope is that someone who is teaching is so good that they don't need a mask for a student to just be, at the very least, demonstrating something on them. The fact of the matter is you do, and you actually especially need it for someone who is still learning, because they're not as good, so it's a lot more likely that they're going to miss and accidentally hit you or something like that. Basically, you just never, ever, ever do it. So the fact that he advocated for it to happen, he's automatically taken all credibility he had as a coach and just threw it out the window. So that is automatically a red mark against him. It's no good. But let's see how he does with the rest of it.
Right, stay there. Don't punch with the arm. Keep it smooth. The body over the center. Right foot flat. Get your hips in.
But Mr. Harrison...
Shh. Too far forward. You can't retreat in a hurry if your lunge fails.
Okay, so that was pretty quick, but we'll go over it. Despite the fact that he did it without a mask, actually, everything he said was correct. It was difficult to see how she actually lunged. It was very clearly, though, not totally correct. But he actually said a lot of things that I've said to a lot of beginner students myself. I know a lot of people have said this to people still learning fencing. But yeah, the stuff that he said was, correct. It's a common habit to want to punch outwards with the arm. You don't want to do that. You want a nice smooth accelerated extension. It's also common for a lot of fencers, but especially beginners, when they lunge to tilt their foot forward instead of keeping the sole of the foot flat. And, you're supposed to keep it flat. It's better on your ankles. It's easier to control once you get used to it, and you will not run through shoes so quickly. He also pointed out that, she needs to keep her torso upright, which is another common thing that beginners tend to do. When they attack, they want to, they want to reach their opponent, but they're not accustomed really to exactly how much distance that extending their arm and lunging with their legs can actually get them. So they will tilt forward to just add on to that, and you don't want to do that. also for the reason that he said, it makes it more difficult to recover and retreat. So the no mask thing was very surprising and was something that would never happen. But everything followed was actually very correct. So I'm happy about that.
Right, we'll work on fitness.
Mr. Harrison said that we should make improvements.
Mr. Harrison's backside. You work on fitness. Everything else follows from that. Emily, take a lunge position. Right, you take the back foot like so. And Emily, you hop. And hop, hop.
We've only got 3 weeks until the semi-finals.
I'll get you fit by then. Up. Hop! Right, pair off. And get hopping. Come on, and hop. And hop. And smile.
So, this behavior so far is something that you do occasionally see a lot of times when a new coach comes into a more casual club. And I can speak from personal experience that this can be how it goes. The students are very accustomed to a certain way of doing things, particularly if it's more casual. They sort of fall into a very easy to achieve rhythm, and they're kind of learning fencing, but they're mostly just honestly playing around. At least that's how it was in my experience. So this really speaks to me. But you come in as the new coach, and this is pretty much how it goes. The students, they're not accustomed to working quite as hard. They're not accustomed to particular drills or really being pushed because a lot of times they weren't really. It was mostly just about, having fun and not really getting better, which there's nothing wrong with having fun. But, if you never advance, then I mean, personally, that's half the reason that I fence, is so that I can get better at it because I like to do it. I have fun, and so I want to get better at the thing that I'm having fun at. But at a lot of new clubs, at more casual clubs, when they get new coaches, there's often this sort of friction that you're seeing between the students and the new coach because the new coach is trying to show them how to really improve. And in order to improve, you need to actually go beyond your comfort zone. And a lot of times, fitness, particularly with an incompetent coach, is one of the first things to go. So the fact that he is ignoring everything else, particularly when they said, the semifinals are coming up soon, which I don't really understand what that is. I think they have this made up tournament format in their head, but this is really all I have to go on, so we're not really going to go into that. But they have, a tournament of some kind coming up, and they think they need to be working on something. But the new coach, who is actually experienced, realizes that they're missing part of their foundation, something that is extremely basic. So even though it doesn't seem at first like that's something that they should be working on, it 100% is. So the fact that he's, ignoring technique in favor of just being able to balance and have good leg strength and, be relatively athletic, because you definitely need stamina to get through a tournament, that's very realistic. Ignoring something that, less experienced people might think you need first in favor of something that you actually need first. And this is why you need professional fencers and experienced fencers coaching these kinds of things instead of just some PE coach. And so you can see he's really, forcing them into doing more balance-based and strength-building based drills and exercises. How he did it was a little bit odd because he didn't have them lined up. He just had them kind of in a crowd and then picked a random fencer out from the crowd and had them try and demonstrate something, but in a very, I would say, condescending way. Like, just basically embarrass them, which is not what you want to do. If a student never comes back because they get tired all the time, then that's one thing. That's the kind of student that will quit any sport that challenges them. But when you're, basically setting the students up to fail, by embarrassing them with just standard drills and workouts, then you're the problem. So that's sort of what he did here, and that's inaccurate. That's something that shouldn't be done. Maybe it happens with some coaches. This is the kind of thing that I can see might happen in maybe one or two clubs around the world, but for the most part, it's not accurate. Every coach I've ever met is better than this. So this is another scene where part of it is very accurate, and then one or two details, despite only being one or two details, are very inaccurate. Let's keep going. Let's see what else there is.
Very small circle. Right, let's look at figure work. Emily. Disengage lunge. 1, 2. Double. Right, stay there. Stay there. Right, what part of the hand do we use to control the point?
Fingers.
That's right. Not the wrist. Try again. Now describe a very small circle. And smaller. Oh dear. You need to relax. See you all next time.
That was weird. Like I said before, they need masks. They both have weapons, and one of them is attacking the other. They absolutely need masks. In terms of what he's actually talking about, it is accurate. All the terms, all the actual technique that he's talking about, that is accurate. A disengaged lunge is exactly what was demonstrated. When he said double, that was basically a lunge with 2 disengages. Everything was actually very well done. And what he mentioned about, what you use to actually create the small circles, and it's the fingers, that was also correct. But then there was that creepy part where he was very close. Coaches are not supposed to do that. That's the kind of thing that, if properly reported, which it should have been, can get you in serious trouble and probably get you kicked out of whatever club or program you're in. If you ever see a coach acting like that, let me just tell you right now, that is not normal, and you should report it to authorities. Fencing coaches will occasionally reorient their students. They'll sometimes have them do a lunge and then stop and stay in that lunge and sort of but whenever they touch the student, it's always small stuff, maybe raise the arm or reposition the weapon or something like that. If you see a coach who gets that close, then that's just weird. But that's not really fencing, that's more just common sense.
Target area's up here.
And are these what you aim for in a woman, sir?
So that part is difficult to decipher because in terms of actual fencing technique, a lot of it was very incorrect, but they're in a class where, as part of the storyline, they're not that good of fencers. So I can't really go into that too much. I have, however, heard some coaches, if a student is doing particularly bad, I have heard some of them joke about, you do remember where the target area is, right? And I can picture that especially for Foyle, because Foyle is the most limited target area. He's a little bit serious, but that's sort of... I have heard that kind of thing brought up before.
Something here, or maybe it's here. Perhaps you give it a feel, sir.
BC, if you want an older man to give you one, there's places in Glasgow where they'll pay you tenner. This is a fencing class.
So for that part of it, I would actually say a lot of that was realistic. I've never seen or heard of students, flirting with their coach to this degree. But the thing is, all coaches, at the very least in the US, and I'm pretty sure pretty much all over the world, and this is in pretty much any sport that I can think of, not just fencing, they had to go through something called Safe Sport, which is this program that is essentially designed to help coaches protect students from various forms of abuse, particularly underage athletes. So I've never seen this kind of behavior from a student, but I can imagine that if it did happen, especially to the point that it's this blatant and it's been repeated from what little I've seen of this show so far, I would imagine that someone would get annoyed. Like I said, I've never seen this behavior, I've never heard of it happening, but I have had some students who don't take the class very seriously. They're basically there as a way to hang out with their other friends who are also there. They will sometimes, they won't interrupt drills as blatantly as this, but they will sort of, drag their feet about doing certain things. And, if I'm not in the gym, then they will sometimes, basically just start talking instead of finishing their drills if I ever had to leave for any reason. And the thing is, after the fifth time in a row that it happens, you start getting a little annoyed. You maybe don't imply that they're a hooker, which is what happened here. You're expected to be, the expert. You're expected to be the to behave in a very professional way. So I I think what happened here is some coaches, me included, have very occasionally felt as annoyed as he was, but you kind of keep most of it inside. You just kind of, make sure that your eyes are on the goal, which is to teach them fencing. If a student is there and is basically their mind is constantly drifting to other things, there's technically nothing wrong with that. Some people will do fencing and, they're not 100% committed to it. And that's fine. You can't ask that of everyone who walks in the fencing club's doors. But when they're constantly interrupting or wandering off or doing something like that, then that can get, that kind of forces some coaches to be a little more stern in those cases. Again, not really to the degree of this, but in situations like it, maybe not with flirting, but just with, going off and doing their own thing, then this sort of level of annoyance is definitely understandable. Maybe not enough to actually act on it entirely. Like I said, you keep most of it in. But yeah, I can see some coaches probably wanting to say something similar to this. But I don't know. Personally, I think this is a real gray area. What he was doing before, though, having the students do a lot of drills and, walking around them and occasionally, giving out advice and really watching every single pair, that is realistic. I've seen some other TV shows where they really don't do anything like that. So I actually liked this setup leading up to this falling, which was kind of weird. And then there was that, which was extremely limited. From what little I could tell, that looked like actual fencers and actual refs. The refs were moving around, they were watching, they were giving out the proper hand signals, and a lot of the fencers were moving like actual fencers. You can tell whenever a lot of these fencers are moving, they're fluid in their motions, and this one even did a behind the back flick, which is something you only see experienced foilists doing. So yeah, it looked like a lot of extras who actually knew what they were doing. Overall, it was not bad. Like I said, there were a few details that really took me out of it. In terms of actual using the right terms, the right techniques, whether or not the actual coaching part of it was accurate, that, that was very well done. Um, Not perfect, but pretty good. So I would say that this episode, from what I've seen, gets an 8.5 out of 10. So that's pretty good. So I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time. Bye.